Well, hello, everyone. Apologize for us being a little late to get started. As I just said on what was formerly called Twitter, we can kind of refer to Prince that way too. The Maybe it's the Ghost of the Machine, for a spooky Halloween. But we're running a little late, and apologies. So I'm Langdon White. This is a show called Cube by Example Insider, where we every month approximately we interview various people who are deeply involved in Kubernetes to kind of find out what they're seeing as what's going to be happening next throughout the project. And the reason is kind of my long running joke is. When you are talking about an open source project, you can go and talk to people who are theoretically in charge of what's going to come out. But because it's open source, if a developer or a contributor wants something else to come out as well, then they just show up on the weekends and do it anyway. So because it's open source, there's a lot more flexibility. So if we go and talk to the people who are actually directly involved, it gives us a little bit more of an insight into what will be coming soon. And so I'd like to welcome a member of the release team, Atharva. And do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Langdon. Hello, I'm Atharva Shinde. I'm from India. I'm currently a senior year student of computer engineering. I was the 1.28 Kubernetes announcements lead for the release team. Um, I've been involved in Kubernetes for a couple of years now. Mostly, I would say non-code contributions because everything the first time I saw Kubernetes, it was just it's the first time you hear about Kubernetes, it's just overwhelming, right? So so for me it was a lot of thing at once. So I've been trying to pave my path through non-code contributions and through somewhat code contributions right now. So yeah, that's about me. We had a wonderful team in 1.28, uh, uh, which uh, which was led by Grace Newen, and the emeritus advisor was Leonard, and a bunch of very nice people leading each sub project of the release team. So yeah, that's basically about me.
So one of the things we like to ask is, okay, so what got you there in the first place? Like, what got you into Kubernetes in the first place? Especially seeing as, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm actually a professor at Boston University. And so I'm constantly trying to get my students involved in containerization and Kubernetes. And so I'm very, very curious, what brought you to it such that you're still in school and working on the release team?
Yeah, so it starts with a basic background of me not getting into the top colleges, and that's what helped me realize that I should work myself into becoming a better developer to get a good job. That was my initial motive. But so finding my way through communities of open source, there are a lot of good communities which you can find online, or even if you just search on YouTube or Google, you could find a bunch of new um, open source community. So I got into them. I got to know about a bunch of open source projects, including cloud native sub projects. And first uh, one of the first, or I would say one of the interesting projects that I could see, that was Kubernetes. And that's how I basically started. As I just went into a couple of meetings without any prior study or any prior knowledge about Kubernetes. I just joined. I still remember I joined as into the SIG Contribex marketing team meeting, and they were very welcoming. I just On the first day, I know that they gave me some responsibilities to inside the sub project, and I was like, wow. On the first day, even if I don't have any knowledge about Kubernetes, I'm going to work in Kubernetes, and that was kind of very exciting. And that kept me going through, keep learning about what Kubernetes exactly is, what are the different components of Kubernetes, how Kubernetes aligns with multiple big projects that needs to be scalable, how microservices works. And that's how I got introduced to a couple of new sub projects inside Kubernetes, like SIG contributs as such, and then test infra, SIG testing, uh, and and I carved my way through what sub projects interest me most. There are a lot of sub
So,
projects to go through. So yeah.
so let me interrupt you for just a second. So we have another guest, Rishit, who should be joining us any second. Hi, Rishit. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And so I actually want to kind of turn around and essentially ask you the same question. But first, can you quickly kind of introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Rishit, and I'm mainly excited. I'm a student at the University of Toronto, and I also work in industry. I'm mainly excited about research, and most of my work is around uh, researching math, researching machine learning. So that's what I mainly do in industry and at University of Toronto. Um, and along the side, I'm also excited about software, which is where I contribute to Kubernetes a bit.
Well, machine learning without computers is a non-trivial exercise, right? I mean, that's a lot of math, on paper. I kind of jokingly refer to data science as, stats with computers, right? But what I was just talking to Atharva about was like kind of what brought him to Kubernetes, like how. And I'm a professor at Boston University, and so I'm constantly trying to get my students to like get involved in containerization and Kubernetes. So more stories like what brought you into it, right? Because I believe you're still also at university currently, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in Kubernetes in the first place?
Yeah. So I actually just finished my I actually just finished my high school like almost 1.5 year ago, and I was in so at that time I was really excited about math, and it was really fun to and at that time I was mainly working on the math Olympiad and doing that kind of stuff. So I was really excited about that, and then when I came across computer science, it was even more fun for me because I could actually apply stuff, and that got me excited about the theoretical aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with Kubernetes, I I honestly just stumbled across the project, and at the start at the start I didn't know much about software in general, but I saw a few things in the project. I think the first thing I saw was I was seeing how what Kubernetes is and how it is structured, and I think the first thing I saw was HCD, the way HCD does raft consensus. That was one of the first things I saw, and I thought, oh well, that's an interesting way to do it. That's an interesting way to manage a database. I had never thought of that, and that turned into like a nice moment for me, and I saw some novel stuff starting out with. So I think that's what got me really excited, and that's how I explored more of Kubernetes to start with.
So for you, you kind of came to the code first, right? Whereas Atharva, it seems like you kind of came to the community first. Is that accurate? And so, Rishit, how did you move from like the code right to the community? What was the transition point, or like what brought you into like into a position where you'd be working with like the release team?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that I got to know a lot more about that when I came to KubeCon Europe. Uh, this is the one in Valencia. So
Mm-hmm.
I was there, and at that time, I had some understanding of Kubernetes. I had I had used it a bit. I had contributed probably one or two things to the code, but I didn't really know about the community around it. Um and I guess that was on me. I never took the initiative to do that. But yeah, at KubeCon EU, I saw a lot of things. I heard about the release team for the first time. I got to know uh, about how active multiple SIGs are, how open everyone to talk about contributions or just code is. So, yeah, I think for me it is pretty much after KubeCon Europe that I got involved uh, with the Kubernetes community.
I gotcha. And so one of the other things I like to ask people is, was Kubernetes kind of both of you? Was it kind of your first experience with open source, or were you involved in, was something else about open source interesting before that? And
So
I'll
I can
kind
go
of ask
first.
either one of you to answer. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So it wasn't my first experience with open source. I had been working on building quite a few open source projects myself, and I had also been maintaining some projects earlier, but mainly around machine learning software. And I was also very actively contributing to TensorFlow at that time. And yeah, I had also been maintaining some of my own open source projects, some of which had been popular. So I don't think it was like my first experience in open source.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think you're giving a talk on PyTorch soon, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe.
I had it like 2 weeks ago. But yeah,
Oh, okay,
so,
yeah. Sorry, yeah, read dates poorly.
yeah, no problem.
Um, so that's really cool, especially for you to get involved kind of so early on in the machine learning stuff. That's awesome. What about you, Atharva? Had you worked kind of in open source first, or was Kubernetes your first kind of exposure to it?
My first open source exposure was the Internet Archive open source project. It was Python.
Hmm.
So the first time I got into open source was into the Internet Archive sub project, and I kind of helped with some stuff around it and got involved into knowing the architecture of the Internet Archive sub project better. And after
Hmm.
that, I moved towards the cloud native technologies, and the first one was Kubernetes. So it was just a whole new experience for me. Yeah.
Hmm. But kind of a natural evolution
Yeah.
of what you've been kind of
Mm.
experiencing. I hear you. So why don't we move on and talk a little bit about kind of your jobs on Kubernetes land. What are you kind of seeing that you think is going to be interesting in or obviously, it'd be weird to say that anything about the next release of Kubernetes is going to be boring and uninteresting. But what is the thing that you're most looking forward to? What is the thing that is most interesting for you that you think would
Um,
benefit the most people or whatever? Go ahead.
yeah. I think there's a really cool feature that's still work in progress, and it's about updating the in place pod resources, and that would mean the allowing pod resources to be created or updated on in place. That means you don't have to recreate the policy in case of the resources are not enough, and it's a long I I would say it's a long run feature, but I'm very excited about that feature in general. But I would say that it's kind of the Kubernetes features are really very streamlined processes, and that's why every feature that you get into Kubernetes is very well picked, and there would be no such Kubernetes enhancement that would you would say that no, it won't be of any use to you. Any What I meant to say is there would be no release. I think that would that would be like not good as previous one or any previous releases. I would say the release process is streamlined, and that would help every feature to get their spotlight.
Yeah, and totally. I mean, that's kind of what I mean is like, of course, well, not only would it be kind of impolite to say that there's any particular part that is not interesting, right? But also, I think, honestly, I think most people find the releases to be generally useful, and, there's general kind of, expansion in what's happening and like how well it works, of course, but that doesn't mean you don't have like special favorites, right? That there's things that for your own self, right, that are going to be the most interesting. What about you, for you, Rashid?
Yeah. So I think one of the features I was looking forward to in the past was about CEL admission policies. So that landed to beta in 1.28, and they originally it was launched a bit earlier. Now it just moved to beta, and they have the common expression language that you could use to do some kind of calculations or manipulate some kind of data or evaluate some conditions. So they and that was quite nice, and I also started using it myself. So I think it was originally launched in 1.26, and now it just moved to beta. And I've been using it since 1.26. So
Can
I
you
thought that
elaborate a
is
little bit
something.
on what the feature is? I'm not sure I followed entirely what it was you said, the feature you
Oh,
were talking
yeah,
about. That's
sure. At least with Kubernetes, you have these admission policies. So what these admission policies allow you to do is just define as well as enforce policies in a Kubernetes cluster. So there's no need to, or you could reduce the reliance on external admission controllers and just use these admission policies. Uh, so what this feature allowed you to do is, or at least what admission policies earlier allowed you to do, was you could define these policies using CEL, which is like this common expression language,
Mhm.
and 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 the API server itself would enforce these admission policies.
I
So
gotcha.
uh, so that was about admission policies, and they moved like the CL based admission policies to beta, uh, and it was launched in, I guess, 1.26, as I was saying. Uh,
Mhm.
so so I, so I personally use that quite a lot of myself. So that is what I was really excited about in 1.28, and yeah.
It's a little bit closer to prime time, as it were. Like it's
It,
almost ready for production.
yeah, and I guess we also use it in industry where I work.
Mhm.
So I got to know a bit more about it, and got to use it in production. So
Right,
yeah, that
right.
was interesting.
Cool. So I was going to sidebar just for a minute because originally I had really hoped that I was going to be actually able to wear a costume for this interview. It is Halloween after all, and so this was my proposal. I was just going to share my picture. Where'd it go? But it did not arrive in time. So unfortunately, we will not be able to enjoy me as a Kubernetes, right, or as a pilot of a ship. But this is totally what I had in mind, and it just didn't quite materialize. As you can see, I already have the beard going. So like I said, I had a number of questions on the side, primarily about what my plan was, and just didn't quite work out. But I do have a black shirt, and I'm very badly backlit, so I kind of have that spookiness going for me today. All right, so moving on from there, do you have any costume ideas for? Are you planning on doing anything for Halloween?
Um, Here, Halloween is not really kind of celebrated here, so I don't really know. It's
It is
kind
a
of new
very
to
big deal in the
me.
U.S.
Yeah. But maybe Rishit knows. Rishit might have something up his sleeve.
Uh, so, so yeah, it is really popular in Toronto.
Yeah.
I know a lot of my friends who have already started doing that kind of stuff and preparing for Halloween. But but for me, it is yeah. I don't have any costume ideas right now. I just have
You could
my
go as a release team member, and just t-shirt and shorts, and it'll look like you're a Kubernetes contributor.
I
Um,
thought it was for little children or something. Is it not limited to them?
so yeah, it's kind of weird in the U.S. There is little children, and that is really probably primary target audience. However, a lot of kind of late high school, early college, and college, and then even kind of right after college, people will party, and in the partying usually involves costumes. And so it's a little bit weird this year, right? Because it's a Tuesday, but but in my neighborhood, over the weekend, there were a lot of people who were kind of, let's say like 16 to 26-ish range, who I saw that were in full on costumes, either going to parties or going to bars or whatever. So it can be kind of a big deal, but it's like, it kind of misses a window typically in like, from like, call it 12 to 16 usually, but then, or actually even younger, like 10 to 16. But the younger kids are really the ones who are going around collecting candy primarily. And then you have older ones who are mostly using it as a party event.
Yeah,
But it
great
can
way
be
to
it can be
let
really
your
cool.
inner child out.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. So yeah, that's I would say Halloween in the United States is largely like that. It kind of obviously varies by region. People don't realize how big and different the U.S. is a lot of the time, and so saying anything is actually specific to any part of the U.S. is probably false. But long story short, yeah, that's kind of the general sense. In fact, I have a class later today, and my wife was absolutely convinced that A, I should just cancel it, and B, that no one's going to show up because it's Halloween. And it's like, I think the class is starts at 3:30. So she's convinced that no one's going to come. So we'll see what happens. But yeah.
We'll join you online again.
Yeah, exactly. I actually think it's funny. I think today we're covering containers. In fact.
Sorry, I was saying I also have a bunch of classes I have to attend today, and I was expecting like most of the people in my school would probably show up in costumes to classes.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see some of that. That'll be entertaining. And in fact, my class today, part of the lecture is actually about containers, so that's kind of fun. Yeah. So all right. So moving on. The real kind of nature of the show, right, is about like kind of what's coming in Kubernetes. So what are you foreseeing, in kind of the next version or the version after that, or, somewhere down the line in the nearish future that you're most excited about to see land, that you're hoping or even contributing to seeing land going forward?
The news for 1.28 was the sidecar containers is official, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a lot of work to be done, and the sidecar containers, there are a lot of new features that are trying to get built, and they would probably be seen into the later releases, maybe 1.30 31 onwards. But yeah, the sidecar containers features would be the worth seeing or worth keeping a watch on.
Gotcha. Yeah. A lot of that, sidecar containers kind of follow the model of, aspect-oriented programming, of which I have been a big fan for a very long time. So I really like most of the way that stuff works. That's a good one. What about you, Rishit? What do you think?
Yeah. So I was particularly excited about. So I was actually talking to someone and who told me about the current load balancer behavior in Kubernetes, and I had observed that myself. So I think there is a feature that has been on work since quite some while, but I'm really excited to see that coming in the next Kubernetes releases. So so apparently what happens is, and maybe you notice this as well, if you use like any cloud provider, where I work is also a cloud provider, so I had like some of this happen. But if you use like any of these cloud providers, they usually use the load balancer's external IP, uh,
Mhm.
and this becomes a big problem because you have the uh, you have the you have the queue proxy and you have the IPVS mode of the kube proxy, since the IP is bounded to like this load balancer external IP. So there were different ways cloud providers used to solve this, and or 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 they would just like bypass the load balancer somewhere, which wasn't ideal. So I guess like there was one feature that aimed to like expose an option for any kind of controllers you have that manage the load balancer. So and they allow you to choose how the kube proxy would behave. So so I was really excited for that because we used to do all kinds of hacks for these, and it would be nice to see the feature come into play.
Nice. Cool. So those are some good things to kind of watch out for. One of the things I wanted to definitely ask you both was, can you tell me a little bit about what it means to be a release team shadow? Because that's another way to kind of get people more involved. So I don't know, whichever one of you would like to kind of maybe give a definition or like how you would get involved as a release team shadow.
Yeah, if you want to go first, Rishit, you can go, or otherwise I can go.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So release shadow particularly means you would be following the steps of what the lead is supposed to do. The respective lead. So there are 5 subgroups right now. There's announcement subgroup. There's bug triage and the CI signal. I think bug triage and CI signal is about to merge into the later releases. And there's doc subteam and there's release team subgroup. So these are the subgroups basically, and each subgroup has a lead assigned to them. So the shadows on the particular subgroup is responsible for following what the release process for that subgroup is. So let's say, as a point of view, as I was the announcements lead, so what the shadows would do is the shadows would reciprocate what tasks I was doing. So I would delegate some tasks among the particular the shadows, and they would follow them correctly, or they would reiterate through them, and they would um, basically learn on how the particular subgroup release team works. So that's the basic motive of what the shadows do. Yeah. And eventually, when they eventually, after 2 or 3 experiences of being a shadow, you would be nominated as the lead, and that's how you would become the part of the leads and help in carrying out the release cycle to success. Yeah.
Gotcha. Rishit, do you have anything to add to that, or would you say that was pretty complete?
Yeah, I think that summarizes it.
And so were you both shadows in the past?
Yeah.
Like before you
Yes.
became the leads?
Yes, I was a shadow on the docs team in the past, and on I was a shadow on the docs team twice, and then in 1.28 I was a lead on the docs team.
Okay, sure. And then, and so would you recommend that as a path for like somebody who wants to kind of get involved in Kubernetes, or do you think you like somebody should kind of go do other stuff first and then come to kind of the shadow kind of role, or is the shadow role kind of a really good way to learn about Kubernetes in general?
Yeah, I think so I think this would differ. Okay, so I'd say what I think might be a nice way to do. But it depends on exactly what you want to do with the project and what you're interested in. So first thing I guess I'd say is read through, uh, probably read through the roles and responsibilities and what kind of work would you be doing if you were a shadow on each of these teams. Each of these teams do different work, and in general, it is a bit different than being involved with, let's say, a SIG and helping the SIG with bug scrub, or helping the SIG with making new features, something like that. It's a bit different than that. So I guess, uh, yeah, I guess it all just depends on checking out the roles and responsibilities, see if you like that kind of stuff, um, uh, uh, and um, and if you are just excited about getting involved with the community, uh, I think there might be some shadow positions uh, which you're interested in and would also allow you to do that. So so I think in that, uh, yeah, mainly just like see the roles and responsibilities. And I personally went through the other routes. I contributed. Um, so I contributed in six first, then tried to contribute myself, and then became a shadow. Uh, and I thought it was really different. So it's like, I guess, mutually exclusive. You could also work on both at the same time.
What about you, Atharva? You have a
Uh, so the idea is same, but I would say, so as I said before, Kubernetes is a vast project, and you would get lost behind what you want to, what your interest lies in. So I have this. This is my opinion. If you want to learn about Kubernetes in general, you should try applying to the Kubernetes release team. So that's how you would get exposed to all the kinds of areas around Kubernetes, because Kubernetes release team apprenticeship program basically deals with managing the enhancements that are proposed by the developers. So
mhm.
we are not developing the enhancements, we are just managing them. So if you want to learn about what you want to learn about new enhancements that are coming in, or if you are interested in what Kubernetes is in general, how it is managed, what are the different components of it, you better try getting into a release shadow program. Um, and if you are uh, this goes either ways. On the other side, if you want to if you have interest in a particular SIG, so you can just help in developing a feature or a bug scrub, as Rishit said, but you can still apply to the release shadow program to get a general understanding of Kubernetes. So the release shadow program is more about managing stuff, getting acquainted with uh, how to manage stuff, how to manage announcements in this case, or maybe how to in this release team, under the docs team, how to document their enhancements. So there are different areas into the release team, as I said before. So you try getting into the team that you find most interest in. Do you find interest in going through the documents? Just apply through to the release doc or release notes. If you find interest in the if you find interest in getting acquainted with how the flaky tests are how flaky tests uh, are dealt with, you can apply to CI signal or bug triage. And if you want to know the general enhancements that are coming through every release, you can apply to enhancements team. So it's more of a general thing.
So kind of to somewhat summarize, right? So like if you're kind of interested in a particular niche of Kubernetes, getting involved in the SIG for that thing is probably the best route, right? But if you kind of want to try to get a sense of Kubernetes as a whole, that's kind of where the shadowing and then eventually being on the release team is a good match.
Yeah.
And it sounds like chicken and egg, like it's kind of just based on your kind of interests, which approach to kind of go down first, and maybe you never swap, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the general idea. Um,
because because we have a lot of new folks joining into Kubernetes who have not contributed to Kubernetes as such. So what I'm talking about is we have a lot of new folks into the release shadow program which have
mhm.
not contributed to Kubernetes code base as such, but they are interested in contributing to Kubernetes. So we select those kind of folks. yeah, that gives a general idea of what we are doing in the release shadow program.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, that's cool. And so, obviously, for anybody who's listening, that is a good way, or that is one of the paths for getting kind of more involved in Kubernetes, especially if you are kind of interested in the project as a whole, which is a non-trivial exercise, because the project is pretty huge. Cool. Let me say this. What do you feel like the biggest problem you ran into with this particular release was? Was there anything specifically that stood out, or something that you're like filing away as like what you could do better next time? What was that thing for you, if anything?
The opinions might differ for each sub team. So for me,
I'm sure.
my my the announcements team basically was very streamlined, so there were no particular down no particular things that were supposed to go very sideways. The for our team, the release went pretty normal, because what we've done in the past releases, I can tell about the past things that we had to deal with. We used to maintain a huge spreadsheet of Google document where we would track the every announcement. So, and as Google spreadsheets might become complex as the number rises. Um, so for the from the past releases, we have migrated towards making things automated, so that has helped a lot in streamlining the current release. And I think it would still, there's a chance of improvement in the automation, but
Mhm.
it's stuck at somewhere in between the APIs. So no support for the APIs and stuff. So if we get the support for APIs of the GraphQL of GitHub, we might streamline the process more of the automation, and that would help a lot. Yeah.
I gotcha. Rishabh, what do you think? Was there anything in particular that stuck out for you as like, something that kind of, as Atharva said, went sideways, or something that, or you felt like it was about to, and that is something to kind of keep an eye on for the next time around?
Yeah. So at least for myself, I think some of the things so things did go sideways, and uh, I think it is mainly I could improve more uh, on trying to make sure that we have a better way to handle pull requests which come in uh, a few hours before you make the release, make the docs release. So we even had that, and I remember there was this situation where we said, "Oh, we want to do the release docs release right now, but we need to get this PR merge first." And
Hmm.
that wasn't ideal. Merging PR so late before the release. So, uh, so I guess I personally need to have better ways to do that and manage that kind of stuff, and still make sure the release gets delivered on time.
Hmm.
So this time around, I did it in uh, a very rushed way, and had quite some pressure on the release day to do this. So I think I could have done that better, and uh, for the next release teams, if I'm back again on the release team, I'd probably do that better next time.
Yeah.
The good thing
And
about the good thing about the Kubernetes release is we have retrospective meetings. So we discuss about everything that went well, or everything that did not went well, and we always have a discussion around what could go well into the next release. So that kind of streamlines every possible future bad things that is going to happen, and we improve on that. So that's a good thing that's a good thing we have in the Kubernetes release team, and that's why we continue to improve into the process of getting good releases.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. I was going to add though that if that's the last time that happens to you in kind of your software career, more power to you, because that is a not uncommon running kind of at the edge. This is one of the reasons, right, that we advise people not to do releases on Fridays anymore, right? Because that's how you end up working the weekend because something slips. So it is definitely something that happens. It always reminds me of, I had a professor in college who actually told me when I was in college that when I got good, right, when I became a professional, I wouldn't have syntax errors anymore, which was also not true. It's just like, it's just kind of par for the course, right? You're going to have bugs, you're going to have late arrival of stuff, et cetera. And so, just kind of have to kind of, what you get better at over time, I think, is estimating the amount of damage it will do and being able to plan for it rather than necessarily not have the thing happen, right? So I think that's always is pretty funny and interesting about the experience of getting better at this stuff, is that it's not necessarily that things get actually better entirely. It's that you do a better job of preparing for them so that you can handle them more efficiently. Cool. Well, I actually was going to say maybe at this point we should wrap it up, unless you had any other comments. Either one did you want to bring up? Was there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you about that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it went pretty well. Yeah, there's nothing
Okay,
from
cool.
me.
All right, Rashid, same?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And hopefully, we'll see you, in the Kubernetes community. I will actually be at KubeCon next week in Chicago. If either of you will be there, definitely look me up. I'm actually trying to start. They haven't quite decided whether it's like a SIG or a working group or a what, but basically something around higher ed and bringing cloud native development, curricula and stuff to try to produce content for faculty to give to their students. So not so much about how Kubernetes works, but how to build software that lives on top of something like Kubernetes,
Okay.
which I think is not well covered. There's lots of things that tell you how to write a sidecar, but there's not a lot of things that tell you why you'd write a sidecar. So that's kind of what we're hoping to spin up. And we're always happy for more contributors or more people involved. So we are on the higher ed channel in the Kubernetes Slack. And we're hoping to, kind of launch some more stuff as we go forward. The thing is, we don't entirely fit in the normal kind of CNCF, model, because we're not quite a working group. We're not quite a SIG. We're, kind of a little bit weird. So they're still trying to figure out what we're going to look like. So with that, I'll say happy Halloween to anyone who celebrates it. And at this point, it's basically a commercial event. So, whatever, but I hope you have a spooky Tuesday, and maybe I'll see some of you next week. Thanks again.